Hi everyone, and welcome to Elite Rugby SandC podcast. First off, if you haven't already, sign up and join Elite Rugby SandC today. We provide you all your strength, conditioning, speed, and recovery needs. You can try before you buy, so try our 7-day $7 trial to get a taste of what we offer here at Elite Rugby SandC. Sign up to our newsletter and receive free bonus content each and every single week. So take your game to the next level, become a beast, and join Elite Rugby SandC today. Today on the podcast, I am joined by Brumbies and Wallabies legend Ben Alexander. Ben made his debut for the Brumbies and Wallabies back in 2008. He played 154 games for the Brumbies and 72 games for the Wallabies. In this episode, Ben discusses the many challenges after playing professional rugby. Ben speaks about how important sleep and nutrition are to performance. Ben talks about the highs and lows of professional rugby and provides great advice for rugby athletes. Growing up, Ben was one of my favourite rugby athletes to watch and learn from. To interview Ben was amazing. If you are listening or watching to this episode on YouTube at Elite Rugby SandC, at the end of the video is a picture I took with Ben Alexander back in 2015. The first time I got to meet one of my rugby idols, which was awesome. So thanks again, Ben, for joining me on the podcast. So g'day, Ben. How are you?
I'm good, mate. Yourself?
Yeah, going really well, thanks. So how did you think the Super Rugby season went this year?
I think it was much better than last year. I think it was the first year there was a bit of sort of comp stability. I know there was a little bit of changing of the scheduling. So we played all the Aussie sides first because New Zealand put their borders up because of COVID. But for the first year of a proper Super Rugby tournament, I thought it was really good, really good. And not losing our teams to Africa for 2 or 3 weeks, I think has really helped. It's sort of, as a fan, you want to watch your team each week and it sort of becomes a part of your weekly habit. And so in the past, people would start following the Brumbies and then we'd head off to Africa for 3 weeks and we've been playing at 3 a.m. and sort of fans just sort of, they fall out of sync or out of habit. And they sort of forget about the Brums or about their Super Rugby team. But this year, there's none of that. And it was even great to a point where I actually didn't know Origin was coming up, which is a shock because I love State of Origin, watch it every year. But I'd been so focused on the Brums run since especially when they went on that really good run against the Kiwis. It's just been all eyes on Brumbies. That's all the only sports news I've been sort of checking lately, apart from NBA. NBA is my other sport that I love watching. But no, I thought it's been awesome. What about you? What do you think?
Yeah, I thought it was really cool to see the Australian sides take that step forward, and it was really good to see the Brumbies play some really good rugby and some open rugby and score some really, really good tries. But it was also good to see the Waratahs play really well and bounce back from a really poor season last year and bring in a new coach, new environment, and just see some of these young players just stand up and show that they can play rugby. We had Tane Edmund on last week, and it was really cool to see his perspective on it. And he's come out of just out of the Waratahs system to now be playing in the Australia A side. So it's just been really fantastic to watch that. And it feels like there's a buzz around Australian rugby now. Like I think we can take on the All Blacks again and hopefully get some wins, not just one win every, I don't know, few weeks or every year. It's hopefully back-to-back wins or something along those lines. And hopefully we can put a really good performance against England as well with that series coming up soon. But yeah, I think the brand of rugby was really cool and the product from all teams was really good. And it was just really exciting to watch. Was there any sort of plays that stood out from the Brumbies and from the comp that caught your eye?
Yeah, Tane Edmund. I think he would make a great 12 or 15. I think he's a great 10, don't get me wrong. But I picked a team, like my World Cup final team in 2023. And I honestly have him probably on the bench. It's sort of like a utility back, kind of like sort of role Reece Hodge or Adam Ashley Cooper in the past. I think he's got a big frame for it, loves the physical part of the game. So he's someone definitely, he was really impressed me. And I mean, I hate the Waratahs more than anything. But I have to say Darren Coleman's made me a little bit of a believer and a tiny bit of a Tar fan. Yeah. Knowing DC's journey, he was at the Brumbies Academy many, many years ago. And might have been lost to rugby, to coaching. I'm not too sure what he sort of planned to do, but he moved on for the Brums, and he sort of got lost in the wilderness a bit. But the success he's had the last 3 or 4 years has just been unbelievable. Wins a shoot shield with Gordon, which they hadn't done in however long. Goes over to LA, wins a comp in their first year that they'd ever been, well, their first season ever, and then comes back and gets the Waratahs from their worst season ever to having a really, really good year with a really young squad. And I think they're only going to get better. So it's awesome. I know DC, known him for a very long time, and I'm just really, really proud and happy for the guy. He's really found his mojo as a coach, and I think it's exciting times ahead for him. He's still very young, and who knows what he can achieve as a coach over the next 10 years.
Yeah, definitely. So life post-rugby seems to be going quite well for yourself. Can you tell our listeners what you've been up to?
Oh, as it's gone up, far from well. Let me tell you, Kieren, far from well. No, I had a really tough couple of years with the lockdowns. The pub, so I own the Dock pub here in Canberra, and having that closed, and trying to make my career transition's been really hard. I know what I want to do, and that's helping people with their eating and to stop beating themselves up for what they eat, because that's something that I used to do and that I don't do anymore. And that's we can get into that a bit later, but that's what I've been striving for and still striving for. It's taken me longer than I ever thought, and I retired very clear in my mind what I was going to do, but making it happen has been the hardest thing I've ever done. And now trying to do it with managing kids, and obviously everything happening with the 2 years with what the Docs had to go through. Thankfully to our amazing customers and patrons, the Docs back as good as ever at the moment, which is great. But I tell you, the last couple of years was tough. It was really, really tough. And I made, the whole pandemic and bushfires, that was not my fault, but there's some other mistakes I made. But I've gotten through them and feel better and stronger and smarter for going through what I've gone through, and doing some also work at KPMG at the moment, which has been awesome. Doing change management work there and just learning a ton. Great team, great company, and a few too many AFL fans in the office for my liking, but there's a few rugby fans in there, so that's good. But just loving that. So yeah, everything at the moment's going great, but to say my career transition's gone well is nothing, couldn't be further from the truth. It's been hard.
It's really interesting to see. And what have you learnt during that transition? Have you found yourself learning to become more resilient and sort of focusing on your mental health a bit more as well during that, or what?
Yeah. So what have I learned the most? I've learned the most about. So step back. While I was still playing, I never really dealt with any mental issues that I had. I just sort of parked them to one side, just focused on training, just tried to sort of head down, bum up, rather than addressing any issues that I had. And a lot of it sort of stemmed from losing that British and Irish Lions series. That was like such a dream to be a part of that, and for it to all go so pear-shaped in the decider, and I got sent off, and because I'd watched every moment of the 2001 series, every minute, absolutely loved it. And then never thought I'd ever be a part of a series and a part of a Lions series. I never even thought I'd play for the Brumbies and Wallabies, let alone to be part of a Lions series at home, playing in a decider, 12 years old in Sydney, my hometown, all my friends, all my family. I was going to propose to my wife after the game. Like, I'd played by 50th in the second test. So it was just, mate, it was a dream, absolute dream. But for the way to go in that last decider was as traumatic an experience that I've ever experienced in my life. I felt like I'd let everyone down. It was so disappointing. And I just sort of bottled that up and never dealt with that for the rest of my career. And that's a lot of those things, especially the way I think about stuff, it sort of changed my brain a little bit. Like, and I think I feel a bit stupid saying it, but like, when someone dies and you lose a family member or you go through something incredibly traumatic, that stress can shape how you think and how your brain sort of functions. And for me, I've been so lucky that was the most traumatic thing that ever happened in my life. Like, I'd never lost a family member, never lost a grandparent until after I retired. So, so learning how my brain functions, because especially when Dan Vickerman, who was a good friend who I played at the 2011 World Cup with, his suicide really hit home. Last time I saw Vix was at the dock after I was still playing. It might have been 3 or 4 months before he committed suicide, but I just remember seeing him at the dock, and he was a past players function, and I'll just never forget that we sort of looked at each other. We hadn't seen each other for a few years, and it just that night of just trying to chat to him will stick with me for the rest of my life, because then the next I heard of him, he committed suicide, and that really hit home for me that, Benny, mate, you got to deal with your mental health, because when you retire, every time I'd read an article about an athlete retiring and struggling in retirement, it really caught my attention, and thought, I better start learning how the brain works, because, mate, you're going to have a really rough patch. And so when I retired, I did a heap of research, learned, about neurochemicals and all that all they work, dopamine, serotonin, oxytocin, all the endorphins, all that stuff. But it wasn't until I retired I learned a lot of things about myself, especially around having a rushing mind, a really busy mind. And that that's been the main source of my setbacks in retirement, has been this rushing mind of me not being able to focus and think clearly and then articulate what I'm thinking clearly. So that's been the number one thing that I've learned in retirement is just how I've had a busy mind. And maybe that was great while I was playing and helped me to read the game really well in game, but in office life, trying to build something, working with other people, and to try and be a leader, I need to be able to communicate what I'm thinking clearly. And that was something I could not do while I was playing. And I'm working every day trying to get better at that. That's why I started my blog, just to try and get better at communicating, because I find writing helps me focus and slow my mind down and think about what I'm thinking about, and then try and communicate it in an engaging way. That's probably for anyone. Check out my blog. I've been posting wrote about regrets in retirement, wrote about my struggles, wrote about some good stuff, wrote about all sorts of things. So that's if you want to know more about sort of what I've learned, just check out the blog.
I think that's a great insight, and thanks for sharing that. I think post rugby, maybe people sort of just stop altogether, and that's where it probably goes wrong. Whereas if you say, for myself, I had to stop because of an injury and felt really down when I was overseas watching my friends play and all that. But becoming an S&C coach to stay with rugby, I think has helped me a lot. So I think if you do retire, maybe even just picking up a volunteer role at your local footy club just to stay around the game, I think can be really beneficial. So maybe something like that could be a way to help you transition out of rugby. You can still give back to the game you love as well. So I would say that's probably helped me a bit, is to still be connected with the game that I do love.
Yeah, and there's something really special about being something bigger than yourself, being a part of a team, a community. And the Brumbies community is fucking awesome. There are so many good people in that organisation, from top down, from Phil Thompson, the CEO, Matt Nobbs, the chairman, Dan McKellar, Laurie Fisher, Gary Quinlivan that fills the water bottles up, to all the past players, to a lot of the current players. It's just to all club rugby, through all the Owls. I wouldn't say there's any good blokes at the Eagles, but there's a ton at the Owls. It's just such an awesome community to be a part of. And when I retired, I was like, I just need to pull out. I need to get away from rugby. But now that I'm back involved with the Owls, back on the Brums board, still involved, I love watching rugby more than ever, because now it's not a job for me anymore. There's no stress attached to it. It is just, I am just a fan that just loves watching rugby. And it's really, really nice that I never dreamed that I would ever play for the Brumbies or Wallabies when I was growing up. I just played because I loved it. I loved playing rugby. I loved my team, hanging out with my teammates. And so that's what my Saturdays were. Just go play rugby with your mates. And especially after that Lions game, there was times where I lost the love for the game. It just became so stressful, and so much of my identity was tied up as Ben, the rugby player. And then when I wouldn't play well, it would just crush my self-esteem. But now the game is just back to it's back to where I felt like as a kid. I just love it. Love being involved. Whether I'm not on the field, Might try and trot out for the Owls every now and then, but just love being involved. And like you said, trying to give back, because I think that's, like you said, it's awesome when you can give back to something that's given you so much.
So if we do go back to when you were growing up, what sports did you play and how did you end up playing rugby?
So I started playing sport when we were living in Melbourne. So I think I played AFL when I was maybe 6 or 7. And then we moved to the US. And if we think Australians are sports mad, God, the Americans put us to shame. And so we're living in Seattle. So the Seattle Supersonics basketball team back then, may they rest in peace. They're no longer with us, but that was my team. Played basketball, played baseball, didn't play gridiron, but I mean, I can't say I was a Seahawks fan because they sucked back then. So didn't really follow.
Yeah, to our listeners, I am a Seahawks fan, and
sorry, mate.
That's all right.
I can't say I was a Mariners and a Sonics fan, but I wasn't a Seahawks. Seahawks stunk, man. They were so bad.
Right.
That's so the Sonics were good. Mariners were all right. The Sonics were really good. So I feel like a phony if I called myself a Seahawks fan, But yeah, so Seattle's where I really started getting into sport. I was an active kid. I swum heaps when I was really young. So then when we came back to Australia, I think I was in about year 5, and some family friends of my parents said, look, you should get Ben and his 2 brothers involved in rugby and needed a sport to play. So I think that was under 12s, so year 6. And my first year, we didn't lose a game. I think we almost said it. We were unbelievable. So and it was the only grand final I won. I don't think I ever won a grand final since then. So I had such an amazing first year where we were like the All Blacks of Western Sydney. Like we dominated. I think we had maybe 1 try scored against us all year. So that first, I look back now why I ended up sticking with rugby is I think that first year was so much fun. And we had a great coach, Alan Metcalf, still in touch with him today. He was a Kiwi. And I don't remember training ever being hard. I just remember it being fun. And still in contact with a lot of guys, a lot of guys from my under 12 side, Beecroft under 12 side. So and then went to a rugby. But I think enjoying that so much that first year was what got me hooked into rugby. And then in year 7, so the next year, I went to a rugby school and did the school sport rugby on Saturday, and then school and club rugby on Saturday, and then district rugby on Sunday for Eastwood. So there was a while there, 3 games of rugby every weekend, and I don't know how my parents managed, because my brothers were all playing 2 or 3 games a weekend. So I didn't realise at the time how much they sacrificed for me and my brothers to be able to play as much footy as we did. But certainly know it now that my kids want to get into sport, and I'm like Saturdays. Come on, girls, Saturday morning, Daddy's got to go to parkrun. But if sports, maybe a little bit later on Saturday, we'll start taking them. But
well, at least you're in a city where it doesn't take long to drive around. Whereas in Sydney, if you're playing multiple games, having to travel from one side to the other, that's much more challenging than Canberra.
I do not know how my parents did it. Do not know.
So what did you learn through strength conditioning over your time training as a professional rugby athlete?
So focus more on your nutrition and sleep than your training. That's the number one thing. If I was to go back to a young Ben, I would say get minimum 5 hours a night of REM and deep sleep, and at least 2 to 3 grams of protein per kilo body weight per day. That's about it. Like if I had my time over again, those are the things I'd do straight away. And what sort of helped that sort of crystallize in my mind was, I just come to that understanding, was 2010, the Brumbies, we were the Real Madrid of Australian rugby. We had all the best names, but all, Matt Giddo, Rocky Elsom, Sterling Mortlock, George Smith, Adam Ashley Cooper, Steve Moore. We just had the most unbelievable team, but we stunk. We came about mid-table 2010. In 2011, we came second last. And if we lost the last game to the Rebels, we would have come last. Now, this is like the Brumbies, it was the first half of Super Rugby was probably, along with the Crusaders, was the best team in Super Rugby history. So to come last in 2011, that was a massive shock. And so a lot of guys, Jake White was then signed as head coach and let a lot of guys go. But he signed a strength and conditioning trainer called Dean Benton, who's now SandC for the Wallabies. And so, as I mentioned, Jake let a lot of senior guys go, and there was only, I think, we went from having about 12 or 13 Wallabies in the squad to about 3. It's like Pat McCabe, Steve Moore, and myself. And so at the start of the 2012 preseason, Dean was really flogging us, and me in particular, as I'd come back pretty heavy from the World Cup. And Dean was flogging us at training, and I'd focused really hard, and I was trying to train really hard. And I remember going up to Dean one day and going, mate, Dean, I can't keep this up. Like, I am trying so hard. And he goes, Benny, I don't care how hard you're training, mate. Go away and focus on your eating and your sleeping, and your training will take care of itself. And I was like, oh, okay. It didn't really make sense, but I'm like, all right, I'll stop focusing on training and I'll start focusing on my nutrition and my sleeping. And what happened was when I started eating better and sleeping better, I had more energy, and just my training went better as a result. Like, I'd been just so focused on the training, I'd neglected the things that give me the energy to train. And so if I was to go back and start again, I would have told myself much earlier on in my career, focus on the things that give you energy to train well. Rather than just focusing on trying to train well, focus on the things that will give you the energy to train well. And that's, I think, the number one reason why I was able to play for as long as I did. And that's something I still do to this day. My wife and I, we're on each other all the time about our sleep and our exercise, exercise, nutrition, because especially nutrition and sleep, because as soon as we sort of start cutting corners and stop focusing on it, and we focus more on work or on our kids, I just notice our energy levels start to drop. We start getting grumpier. We stop doing as good a quality work. We stop being patient with our kids. And so I just think everything in life just seems to fall into place if you focus on your nutrition and your sleep. And we also learn, like, all the teams pretty much more or less have got the same weights programs, and they got the same on-field programs. Yeah, you might do 2 reps more of one thing or a different exercise, but it's all pretty much the same. But I think where the Kiwis have left us for dead, and the teams that do the best, from my experience, have been the teams that do the stuff away from training the best. Everyone more or less does the same stuff at training, but it's the teams, when the players leave the headquarters, are they still eating well, and are they prioritizing their sleep? And I think the clubs that do that are the ones that do well on the field, regardless of whatever tactics or however they style of game plan they play. I do truly believe that, especially with Brums in that 2012, 13, 14 and 15, when we had that massive turnaround, made the grand final, made the preliminary final for the next 2 years. That were the years we had a kitchen and a chef. And there's certainly, I know the Brums bounced back this year without food, which was unbelievable, because I think they could have won the whole thing if they still had a chef. And I mean, they still got the sleep room, but I think that's the most short-sighted decision Brumbies have ever made, apart from maybe selling the HQ, is to not still have a chef or not still have I don't know if the team still eat AIS. Sometimes we'd go over and eat in the dining hall, but just making it easy for people to eat, for players to eat well, and just keeping them focused on the nutrition and sleep. I just can't emphasize it enough. If any young kids are out there, stop worrying about your training and focus on eating and sleeping well. And then your training, not saying to not train hard, but just not focus on training. Focus on eating and sleeping well, and then your training will take care of itself.
Hi everyone, we just wanted to take a break from this episode. We hope you are enjoying this episode so far, and also all the content we have produced. We appreciate all the support from our listeners and followers so far. If you haven't already, sign up to Elite Rugby SandC newsletter today. We provide you free, exclusive content each and every single week to our subscribers. Link in the bio. Remember to like, subscribe, and share Elite Rugby SandC on social media to all your friends and families. So thanks again for your support, and now back to the episode.
Yeah, couldn't agree more. And you just don't realize how important sleep is until you start getting better sleep. And it's the same thing. You don't know how good nutrition is until you start improving it and start figuring out, like, wow, this is actually making me feel more energized and feel like I'm recovering a lot faster, and my game's just sort of taking care of itself. So yeah, if you can get those 2 key aspects and also do the work as well, then yeah, you're going to be putting yourself in a good position every single training, and put yourself in a really good position on game day to play your best rugby.
100%.
That's awesome. So, who were some of your favorite teammates to play with, and why?
Oh, George Smith is just unbelievable. And I like Georgie, I watched him while I was at school. I think it was when he was first coming through. And to be able to be a teammate and a friend, it was just unbelievable to be able to play in the same team as that guy. Yeah, everyone knows how amazing a footballer he was, and an even better bloke. I can't say I enjoyed playing with Scott Fardy very much. He's a pain in the ass. Love playing with Fards. Obviously one of my best mates. I wish I played against Carl Heyman. He was someone I really respected, and I've got to know after rugby, and really, really sad with what's happening with him. I'm not sure people are aware. Carl Heyman I think he was 1,000th All Black and probably the best tight end they've ever had. And he is 43, 44, and he's already been diagnosed with dementia. He played a crazy amount of footy in Europe and played through head knocks. And it was lucky to play Barbar's game with him and got to have a beer with him. And we've just sort of stayed in touch on Strava. And I wish I got to have played with Carl or against Carl, because he was someone I tried to emulate. But yeah, they're probably the three.
Awesome. So when you are looking back on the games that you have played, who were some of the toughest props and hookers that you played against or scrummage against?
Hooker easy as William Savat, the French hooker. I think he's the French forward coach at the moment. He's massive. Oh, he was huge. And then they'd have this tiny little tight end, Nicholas Mas, who like pretty much could hide behind the hooker, was so big no one could even get to the prop because he was just sitting in right behind him. So Nicholas Mas was probably one of the best tight ends. William Savat, easily best hooker I ever scrummed against. And then Dan Palmer was definitely one of the best scrummagers I ever scrummed against. And we're very, it's really sad that we never got to see much of him, much of him on the world stage, because he was, like yourself, he had to retire because of injury. He had foot issues, so that's really sad because he could have been one of the best props in the world. Ben Robinson for a few years was one of the best in the world, the Fat Cat, and we played a lot of school together. We played some district rugby together. I used to be his second rower for Eastwood when we were under 14s. So the kitten, he was pretty awesome. But yeah, Steve Thompson, another English hooker. Big English hooker. He was the 2003 World Cup hooker. Played one test against him, and he would just. He was bigger than I think any prop I ever played against. And so he another sad case of says he doesn't remember winning the 2003 World Cup final through dementia or through head knock. So that's really sad, but he was a big unit to scrum against.
So how important is your setup for scrummaging, and what were the main areas you focused on when you were packing down?
Well, anyone doesn't know what Dan Palmer, he always said there's 4 parts of scrummaging: technical, tactical, physical, and mental. So it's like technical is your setup. So making sure, you're in the right shape and you're efficient with your engagement. So you sort of like being on the starting blocks of a race, 100-meter running race, you're not going to be just standing upright and then they pull the trigger and then you try and start running. You got to get set, get in the right position to explode and get going. So technical. Tactical was what you're trying to do as an 8, whether you're trying to take angles. The physical was down to the strength or the amount of force that the full 8 could produce. And then obviously there was the mental, where people switched on and fired up to scrum. Because you could have a great scrum, but if blokes weren't switched on and fired up, well, it didn't matter. None of the others mattered. So they were the 4. When you're looking at scrummaging, that's, I think, the best. Dan explained it. He explains it so well and so clearly and in a simple way that, you get those 4 parts of scrummaging right, you're going to have a pretty dominant scrum.
Awesome. Do you think it's beneficial for young props coming up to learn how to scrummage on both sides? And when they do make that sort of decision, which one they want to go to, how do you sort of know if you want to be a loosehead, tighthead, or even make the transition to being a hooker?
Yeah, I don't know. I don't know the answer to that. It certainly was much more beneficial for the first half of my career because we could only have one prop on the bench. So someone had to play both sides. Whereas now I'm not quite so sure because, sorry, dogs just come through the light.
That's all good. We're dog friendly on this podcast.
Dog friendly. Marley's 12, so our old cavoodle. Just come to say hello. There you go. I don't know whether I think now because there's 2 props on the bench, you kind of got to specialise. But when do you decide? I don't know. I guess it depends on your body shape. Depends what you like. I think if you do like to play a bit more free ranging, I would say Loosehead's probably a bit better than tighthead because tighthead is just that much more physically draining at scrum time. But yeah, I don't really have an answer for that, to be honest.
That's all good. It's just a question that popped in my head because I think it was back when I was in first 15 at Darramullen here in Canberra. It wasn't until the end of sort of the season that I started getting beaten quite easy on the tighthead side. So I just made a decision like I just can't keep up. So I went to Loosehead and really enjoyed it a lot more. And I felt I could give something to the team instead of being that liability. And then when I was in Colts, sort of towards the end of my second year and then first year of grade, I made the switch to hooker just because there was more of an opportunity. And I thought that was a good transition for me. It was a lot easier on my feet, on my big toe. That was the injury for me. It was a big toe. But I look back now, and if I see any young props going up, I was like, learn how to throw because some hookers just can't really throw that well. And if you can learn how to throw really well and also scrummage really well, you might get to a stage where you might have an opportunity at being a hooker and could go to the next level. So yeah, that would be my advice, is just to keep throwing. If it doesn't matter where you are from 1, 2, or 3, and just sort of see how you go being a prop and test both sides of the scrum and sort of see what happens and then make the decision when you need to.
Oh, and like you already said it, you got to enjoy the position you're playing. As if you don't, then what are you doing? Like, why are you even there? So, or you'll hang up the boots if you're not enjoying footy. So you got to find, number one, you got to find a position you enjoy and what you feel like you're contributing to the team, because no one wants to feel like they're a passenger and not contributing to the the success of the team. So you want to find a position where you feel like you're contributing.
So looking back to the more successful years of the Brumbies, what made it so successful off the field in terms of the environment and the culture?
Are you talking about what era?
Let's say when Jake White took over and then you started to play some more consistent and better rugby.
I just think the program, Brumbies went through an evolution that had so much success in the early 2000s, and there was just this gradual decline from that 04 final when the Brums won full house. It just, as an organisation, it just decayed a little bit and it hit rock bottom in 2011. And then ever since Jake came in 2012 and revamped it, really gave the place a big shot in the arm. The club's been in the top 2 Aussie sides pretty much ever since, I think. I don't think we've come outside the top 2 for 10 years now. Correct me if I'm wrong, but I can't comment on that early era other than they did play. Why I followed the Brumbies instead of the Waratahs, even though I lived in Sydney, was just the style of play the Brums played was unbelievable. And so, this first time of having sort of 3 phases in attack, they have 3-phase plans and very structured. They had structure to the attack, which allowed them to play so expansively. So they were really liked watching that style of play, which got me hooked as a kid watching the Brums. But basically the teams that I was a part of that did better were the ones that were just more professional. Probably stayed off the soup a bit more. I stayed off the soup more, and like we said before, blokes were making the effort to eat well and sleep well away from footy, and we're just really focused on trying to win the bloody thing. Because there's a few years there where, especially in 2012, a lot of us had our eye on the World Cup because we had such a heavy Wallaby squad. There was a lot of guys sort of just, and I might have been probably guilty of it too, just sort of one eye on the World Cup and probably didn't give 2011 my best shake as at the Brums, and that's really disappointing to have to say that, but that's the truth. So
it's a great insight. So if you could focus on certain, like your favorite memories, what has been your favorite sort of standout memories from professional rugby?
Oh, well, like obviously the friends and the experiences, like it was awesome. Get to travel the world, play in front of big crowds, beating England at Twickenham like a few times. That they're unbelievably special. anytime you beat the All Blacks, so beating them in Hong Kong, that was special. The World Cup, beating the Springboks in the quarterfinal, that was special. Being part of the Lions series, and then especially with the Brums, getting to that 2013 grand final, and that was like 3 weeks after that line. That was such a roller coaster for me. Like, well, for the team, a lot of us had been a part of that Lions series, and then we had to bounce back straight into a finals campaign, and to just hang on to beat the Bulls at Loftus, which no one had ever done, and in a semi. So that was super special. And then to travel to New Zealand and nearly win the final. That's definitely. I mean, we didn't win the title, but I'm just super proud of what we achieved that year, and take so many lessons in life. Even with the work I'm doing now at KPMG around change management, there's just so much I learned and observed with how the Brumbies changed from 2011 to 2012 that then just set the organisation off on a good path, and the team's been super consistent ever since on the field.
That's awesome. So my final question is, what is the main advice you tell young rugby athletes today wanting to be professional? So outside of we've talked about sleep and nutrition, is there anything else you like to tell them?
No.
Easy enough. Just sleep, nutrition, be professional, would you say is trying
that is being professional, but you got to enjoy it as well. And understand why you're playing the game. And a lot of us, it's a game. Have fun, enjoy it, especially as a young kid. If you're not enjoying it, you won't stick with it. So especially as a young kid, you've got to enjoy it. And then if you want to take it to the next level, like you are enjoying it, you want to try and have a crack at take it to the next level, then, kids should, I'm super strict on my kids around nutrition, and well, not super strict, but I want my daughters to have good eating and sleeping habits. So I think it's something at any age in life people should be focusing on, but especially if you want to play professionally, tracking your protein intake and your calories, that's, I think, and tracking your sleep, that's certainly something I think, any aspiring athlete or anyone that just wants to do better in sleep, having better sleep and eating, I think tracking your sleep and your food is the number one way to go about making little changes, which give you big results over time.
That's awesome. And for our listeners out there, if you're wanting to learn more about sleep, we did do an episode of Angus Teese. I think it was episode 10 or 11.
I got my Oura ring, just buy an Oura ring.
As well. Yep. I've got a Whoop on the wrist.
All you need to do, try to get more than 5 hours of combined REM and deep sleep. That's it. If you can do that every night, you'll be sweet.
Awesome.
It's not 5 hours of total sleep. 5 hours of REM and deep. They're the two stages of sleep where the body and brain really start repairing.
And the rest of that's just your light sleep. And
that doesn't do much. That doesn't do the whole much for our body and brain. It's the REM and deep where the magic happens.
The most I've learned about sleep was from Dr. Matthew Walker, who was on the Joe Rogan podcast, and he also has a book called Why We Sleep. I would highly recommend anyone just wanting to learn those different stages of sleep, but also how much it can affect you in terms of performance. And it's a real eye opener, and I would highly recommend reading that book or listening to that podcast as well.
Yeah, it is. If they could, like, the benefits you get from sleep, if they could turn that into a supplement or a steroid, it'll be the most powerful performance enhancer on the planet. A good night's sleep will do more for your performance than any protein supplement, any steroid, whatever. A good night's sleep is the ultimate performance enhancer.
Yeah, 100%. So where can people find you on social media in terms of your blog and also your app, Alfred?
Yeah, so Ben's blog, so on the website Substack, so benalexander.substack.com, or just check me out on Instagram or Twitter. The links to my blog are there. And then Alfred is a calorie counting service that helps you count your calories for you in a minute a day. So we adjust a minute a day. So check that out. You can find links to that through my socials as well.
Awesome. So thanks for coming on today, Ben. It's been awesome to have you on and share your thoughts about life after rugby. And can't say thank you enough. So thanks for listening and coming on, and thank you everyone for listening as well.
My pleasure. Cheers. Cheers, Kieren.
So thanks for tuning into another episode of Elite Rugby SandC podcast. Remember to like, subscribe, and rate Elite Rugby SandC on Spotify, YouTube, and follow us on Instagram. Sign up to become a beast today via the link in the description or via Instagram page. Also, sign up to our newsletter and receive free bonus content each and every single week. So don't wait, make that good decision and join Elite Rugby SandC today and take your game to the next level.